TaxAct can think of a million things more fun than filing taxes. TaxAct is going to name some now. Sitting in traffic. Folding a fitted bedsheet. Listening to your coworker talk about his fantasy team. Digging a hole. Digging an even larger hole next to that original hole. Unfortunately, TaxAct's filing software can't make taxes fun. But TaxAct can help you get them done. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
Sunday morning. With us today is the former speaker. We have Kevin McCarthy. And, politics around the world. Well, they're being reshaped a little bit. Well, Mr. Speaker, give us your interpretation of what the heck is going on. Russia, China, India, Pakistan, Cuba, which is our next door neighbor. Where do you want to start?
Well, since President Trump has come into office, there has been a reshaping of world power, a geopolitical shape. And I believe something like this only happens about once every 50 years. Remember, what the world looked like in the 80s. If it wasn't for Reagan, Thatcher, and the Pope, our world would be different. But it reshaped the power structure. Now, the first thing that President Trump did, he went to the Middle East, and people questioned, why would you go to the Middle East on your first trip? Well, he had to get the price of oil lower to curb inflation, also to put pressure on Putin, reestablish those relationships in the Middle East that Biden had broken. He had to secure the border so America was safe, knowing who's coming into the country and who's not. We watched Latin America, where China has become stronger. We've watched China go into Cuba and Russia and have listening devices and then watch what our military was doing. Well, in this short amount of time, the president has secured the border, but you've got to look at these moves. They mean something more long term, because America and the world has not seen something what is called the crinks. Think about that. The crinks are China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. We haven't seen something like this where countries bound together to fight the democracies of the world since the 1930s. And it made the world a more difficult place. China needs 11 million barrels a day to run their economic engine. They get a lot of that from Russia, from Iran, and from Venezuela. And in doing so, they influence greater ability throughout around the world. Since President Trump came in, changing the power in Venezuela was remarkable, because we're watching in Latin America a lot more in democracy, conservative, capitalist leaders go up, which help their countries grow economically, curb their inflation, greater freedom. So we've watched our own hemisphere get safer. We're watching Cuba fall because it was just being subsidized by Venezuela and others. And finally, we hope that freedom gets there. Well, if that freedom gets there, hopefully China and Russia are kicked out and spying on America. Now, in Iran, China has been getting a discount on the oil because the Iranian oil is sanctioned. So they had an advantage. But now, when they don't have this, they've got a greater struggle, which makes the free world in America stronger. We've watched President Trump engage in stopping wars around the world, from the India, Pakistan, and others. We're watching telling India not to buy the Russian oil to put greater pressure to end the war in Ukraine. And then President Trump later this month is going to China. What a difference in less than 2 years. One, that the American president is going to China after a trade agreement, having greater control of the balance of energy in the world, and in a greater strength to represent America while he's in China. You had China just this last week criticize Iran, one of the members of the CRINC, from attacking other Middle Eastern countries. That hasn't happened before. And so here we are in a short amount of time, President Trump reshaping the power structure, America producing more energy, a stronger economy, a safer border, and stepping into the world stage after stopping wars and having a greater flow of energy that China needs. People will study this. Normally, this would take decades to be able to accomplish. And then trying to cut the head off the snake that funds the proxies of terrorism around the world, Iran. It is an unbelievable feat in a short amount of time. And if this continues to carry out, it's our grandchildren that will look back and say, you've lived in a world of security and safety that we haven't seen. Because there's an interesting article that Henry Kissinger and Graham Allison wrote a number of years ago. And if you speed the numbers up, 80, 80, and 9, it's been 80 years since the world power has been in a great war. And if you study history, that's longer than since the Roman Empire. We have lived in the most peaceful time in the world because America has led, and those actions of Reagan, Thatcher, and the Pope years ago. Now, President Trump has picked up that mantle and is setting the next decades, if this plays out the way he has continued to play it, for the world to be safe and prosperity and economic growth that we haven't seen.
Now, let me tell you how I think President Trump is a little bit smarter than Franklin Roosevelt. The reason for World War II is because we cut out Japan from oil. Now, whether he was listening to me and you talking about it months ago, but President Trump came out last week and says China is going to have all the oil it needs.
Exactly.
Which is the smartest thing. I mean, he has become the genius president of our time, because China, and what we said the day before, that China has even criticized Iran for attacking its neighbors. So we have unified the Arab nations, the United Emirates.
Think about it. He's building off the Abraham Accords, President Trump is. We're securing the strait that provides the energy to China, and they're now looking at Iran is the problem. And if we're helping them, they want to be greater friends with us. But we also have the power if they do something wrong. That creates a greater relationship instead of a contrast that would build towards war. Remember, in the history of the world, 16 times the number 2 power has surpassed the number 1. Only 4 times they did not go to war. These actions that President Trump has taken so early, strategically brilliant, will make sure that does not come to pass again.
And let me say one more thing. You know, he's got him and Xi have in China have a relationship, and they know that it's not going to be a war; it's going to be a negotiation. And him and Putin, even though Putin is a pain in the rear, him and Putin have a relationship where we know it's not going to be a war; it's going to be a negotiation.
Yes. President Trump is one of the greatest negotiators, but think about what President Trump has done from the day he's taken office to now. He's only made his hands stronger in removing Maduro, right? In eliminating Iran from having a nuclear weapon. He comes with strength, and he going to China only makes it that China has a greater respect for the president. And now the president's going into China has greater control over the energy that China needs, and he says, I'm going to provide it to you.
Well, Kevin McCarthy, one more item. Cuba, any day now, I understand. And Marco Rubio, who's become the new adult in the room, is talking to Cuba, and they're talking Spanish in their own accent.
Yeah, well, he's Cuban heritage. And the one thing I would say here is President Trump has done all this without putting thousands of American troops on the ground. And these wars are not long-lasting. That's what's so extraordinary, that he's learned from the past, made us even stronger in that protected. And what he's done is put the pressure on Cuba and show them how what they have been living off of, with communism and others, has such a failure. Well, it's going to grip them into a place that we have a stronger negotiating hand, just like he's been doing with China.
Well, Kevin McCarthy, Speaker, you'll always be my Speaker. Thank you so much for coming on this Sunday morning. And God bless America, and God bless President Trump. He's doing the right thing for the world, and I'm very thankful of it.
Yes, he is.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
you,
much.
John.